at the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies of Culture. And let me just briefly remind you of what Team Society is and why we're here. Well, essentially in Team Society, we do two things. So we conduct research, do some research projects, but we also have a sort of mission to disseminate and promote energy and sustainability related work based in the social sciences and humanities across NTNU, and to establish new links between NTNU communities of that variety, and also with the kind of engineering oriented communities. So, and one of the ways that we try to do this is through these bi-weekly webinars. And we have today a very nice presentation by Lars Egner, who is here from the Department of Psychology, and he will tell us about why people retrofit their homes. And to comment on that, we have Professor Thomas Berker from the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies of Culture, and following that, we'll have our usual discussion. So I'll just leave the digital floor to you now, Lars Egner. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for that introduction. First, can you see I skid in?
Definitely, very nice.
Yeah, perfect. So I am here to talk about like why do people energy retrofit? And first of all, energy retrofitting is the act of making your house use less energy, and it is usually done by reducing the demand for heating, and that is often done by adding insulation. And as I say in the title, it can be a pretty boring behavior. So I first want to talk about like why do I talk about this, and I think the best reason is that household space heating, to like only the heating of private citizen rooms take up almost 17% of the energy use in the EU. So it is a huge impact behavior, and the way to reduce this is primarily adding insulation. And of course, when you add insulation, you reduce the energy consumption, which is overall a good thing for several sustainability goals, as for example, there is really no energy source that is as sustainable as no energy. Like they all have their individual issues, and when you think about energy consumption in houses, you often think about like turning off your lights. But I made this little comparison here that if you turn off a LED light bulb for 12 hours each day for a full year, that saves 37 kilowatt hours, but 1 square meter of a standard Norwegian house uses 220 kilowatt hours. So you have to then turn off 6 or 7 light bulbs per square meter of your house. It is like the dimensions are really in favor of do something with your heating. But this is being a reasonably high impact behavior. It has not received that much attention from the more psychological or social science, behavioral sciences. It has gotten a lot of attention from more technical, like engineering and economical sciences. But the problem with this is that they are really not that skilled in human behavior. I made this like very simplified model of how they usually think, and it basically boils down to if people think it is economically viable, then they do it, which again boils down to the suggestions they make are either more subsidies or more information. It doesn't really work when you look at the data, because this whole model relies on that humans are rational beings, or they are capable of being rational beings. Human behavior is not primarily based on the rationality, so it is kind of doomed to fail. And now, like, this is obviously very simplified kind of hyperbole of the economical models, but it's sadly not too hyperbole. So the two things I looked at is the lock-in effect and freeriding. Now, most of you do not know what a lock-in effect is. So I'm gonna briefly explain. Say that you have two households, each have a low energy standard. One of them uses a medium amount of money to invest. The other uses a lot. The resulting energy standard will, of course, then be better for this house than this house. Now, this house can then choose to use more money to reach the same standard. The total cost of this is usually higher than if you do it in a step, because you have to call the contractors twice, and some of the technical solutions implemented here will have to be changed. So this means that because this step is not really economically viable, it will not happen. So that this household will be locked in at a medium energy standard until it is economically viable to upgrade. But the problem with this is that it is a really tough fit for psychological, more behavior is like the idea that you do something and it is a success leads to you doing it less is it's a very tough fit. I'm not going to go into why, but in general, in behavior, we see that the more you do something, the more you like it. So I began searching for some data on the lock-in effect because I wanted to see how strong it is. And there's a lot of papers talking about it. You will see that they never cite any real source in it. And it took me some time to realize, but it seems like there is no real data on that lock-in in private households is a thing. And then I remember that, yeah, I actually have data on this because we had a large survey that actually asked households if they have added installation in the last 3 years and if they are planning on. I am not going to go into the full results as it's being recorded. You can pause it and read on a simplest site, and basically households that have not retrofitted in the last 3 years have about a 2% chance of retrofitting now. But households that have retrofitted in the last 3 years has a 12% chance, which is way higher. Another way to look at it is that for each like retrofit measure that you have done in the last 3 years, it increases your predicted amount of energy retrofit measures by 250%. And if we account for some factors like age, income, size of the house, age of the house, it goes a bit down. I mean, it is still high. And if we account for some psychological factors, it goes up again. And either way you look at it, the amount of previous recently done measures is very strongly associated by the current amount. So it is not really like this, it is more like you speed it up. And this is an issue not only because we are then retrofitting the houses that probably do not really need it, but a lot of governments, including Norway, we use the number of retrofits to indicate the development of the housing stock. But if it's the same house as this, doesn't really make any sense, because which houses are being retrofitted is more important than how many. I will also quickly cover Freeriding. It is in essence if you pay someone to do something which they are already doing, like that has no point. So then they are free riding there in incentive. For example, if a workplace is paying for free gym memberships, but I often see that is that people that are already working out, they take advantage of the free memberships. So they are then free riding the incentives, and it's the same thing here. At some households are obviously retrofitting by its own motivation, but we are paying, and that's called a free riding. And all of these subsidies in Norway comes from a tax on our electricity bill. So we really want the subsidies to actually do something. So the solution, at least here, is that we have really raised the bar for receiving these subsidies, so that households that want to get the subsidies have to like really aim for a high standard. So in that sense, we hope the subsidies are actually doing something. It is again linked to this thing that we are only really subsidizing is like the large scale, partly because we want to avoid lock-in. It's again, I argue, is not a real issue, at least in terms of motivation. But also we want the free riding to be low. So we set the bar high. So I measured the free riding in Norway, and I compared it to Switzerland. And same thing. I'm not gonna go through the full. I say, yeah, in Norway, Freeriding is super low. Actually, 90% of the subsidies have an effect. And yeah, this is everyone's happy. Typisk norsk og bare go, as we say, except for some of you might have thought about that, who can actually get over this bar? Like, retrofitting is expensive, so the higher we set the bar, the more expensive the retrofit you have to do in order to get these subsidies. It can actually look at the cost of the retrofits that are receiving subsidies and see that if you retrofit for less than $250,000, just basically for to get it, you really have to go over $500,000 to get anything, and even up to like 2 million, 3, 4, 5 to get these subsidies to for your debt thing. So I looked at the distribution of retrofitters in terms of income across income deciles. So this is the top 10%, and this is the bottom. If we look at all retrofits, this is a pretty straight curve where the high income households retrofit more. It is kind of expected. When we look at who gets the subsidies to do it, you actually see that the top 20% gets 50% of all subsidies. And if you are basically not in the top 40%, you have a really low chance of getting subsidies. And as I mentioned, these subsidies come from a tax on electricity, and then assuming the lower income deciles have a higher electricity bill, we are basically taking money from the low income and giving it to the high, and we do not really have a large scale subsidy system for households without high income. And yeah, thirdly, is this ethical? That is a question in its own, but it is also a problem related to emission, because we see that the more unequal societies have a higher carbon emission. So this is contributing to the very problem they were intended to solve. So setting the bar high it has its issues. Yeah, I want to also disclaim again that these articles are currently in revision, so it is not science yet. I hope it is very soon, but we will see. So to conclude, the lock-in effect is probably not as bad as previously thought, like even though this is a better solution than this is not a bad option. And yeah, Norway has really low freeriding on its retrofit subsidies, but this really comes at a cost. So yeah, that is my current research. I think I will now be taking questions from the discussion first.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was super interesting. Lots of really great insights. And then we give the word directly to the commentator, Thomas Berker, who can take the mic.
Yes, the commentator, like in a sports match. And now we see the paper number 2. It is first out there. I think everyone understood this is 2 papers that are under review, and I think it will be science soon. I can't see anything really crucial from blocking them to become science. I like this formulation. It's not science yet, but soon it will become. I would like to start with the second paper, and I would like to just a comment there. Really, it's add one more argument why this is an important paper. So you said it's an ethical problem, probably, this unequal distribution of subsidies. And also counterintuitive, isn't it? I mean, that you subsidize those that have already a lot of money. I think it is also a political problem, and probably it could be that it will become even more so a political problem, because the question of social justice and all these measures and policies regarding climate change mitigation efforts becomes more and more pronounced. I think this big problem, I hope it won't be a really big problem in Norway soon, but we see this in other countries, that a certain populist movement always includes the sentiment that this is a plot of the rich, of the elites, against us normal people, like poor people or normal people. And then you get this idea when you see that your neighbor is getting subsidies in addition to having this huge big house, then you really get support for your theory that all the whole talk about climate change and the whole talk about sustainability, that there is something wrong with it, and that it has to do that it is the elites that somehow get also, in addition to all the other ways, get privileges out of this. So I think that's really important to point this out. I mean, free riding is a concern. I can see that, but maybe this will always be, when we look at it in terms of politics, there will be always some trade-offs. And I think your argument is adding here to the question how these policies should be formed in the future. So that's very nice.
Yeah, I haven't actually thought about that. Yeah, this is as it is kind of fuel for the theories that it is only like a plot for the elites. Yeah, thank you. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it will become more important, this argument. The other paper, the question of the lock-ins, that's I want to thank you for this too. The humble insulation. It's really, you said it's maybe a boring topic. It's the boring topic of retrofits, and then within this boring topic we have the insulation. Nobody can see it. It's really just there doing its work. It's low-tech mostly. I mean, there's high-tech variants of insulation too, but in most cases it works very well as a low-tech measure, and it's really important and it's really invisible, and it's often forgotten because of this. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Already in the 1980s, Wilk and Wilhite, they wrote this article about why on earth are people not insulating their houses in the United States. This is so crazy. They would rather do very visible things that make no sense, but not insulation. So they did an anthropological study, and I think basically they found that people are more interested in the visible things that they can show to others than in insulation. So now you looked at insulation, and you found that if someone insulates, basically it's rather likely that this person at a later occasion will continue to insulate.
Yes.
That's basically what you found. And I wanted to ask you there, how would this look like when you're looking at another type of measure, like a more energy efficient heating system? Because I got that right, didn't I? You focused on insulation, which I have no problem with, but maybe there's something special going on with insulation.
Yes,
that's my question.
I really agree, because I also think that insulation really stands out as a high impact environmental action that also adds comfort. Like it is most other actions, like reducing travel, reducing meat consumption, reducing buying stuff, all add it in also, as you mentioned, no one can really see it. I actually came across in I was a co-researcher with another study where a house owner insisted on installing his solar panels where the neighbors could see it, and not on the side that was the most efficient. I don't remember the actual outcome, but I think it goes to show that there are a strong social aspect, or showing your own identity also is really important in this. Yeah, I don't know if that answered, or if I went on a tangent there.
It's a doubt that I have, that if you would, and I agree with you, it is important, but if you would focus on another kind of energy retrofit measure, not insulation, you might get different results. Because obviously when you insulate one wall, then it makes sense that you take the other wall when you do the next retrofit. I think there's this kind of cumulative and also incremental way of using this kind of measure, energy retrofit measure, which is quite common and which therefore you find in your material.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas what Birgit Riesold and I, what we looked at were retrofits that were doing the opposite. They were making buildings less energy efficient. Yeah, that's because a lot about looking nice and opening up spaces, for example. That's what Birgit observed, because she visited all these buildings that were built around the same time. And for her as a building engineer, it was she was sometimes really horrified by what she saw, what people did to these houses in their retrofits. And then that's the reason why the argument was, okay, if you do a big retrofit, invest a lot of money in something that actually reduces the energy performance of a building, it is less likely that you will do another retrofit where you improve the energy performance. I think what you found is a special case where you look at insulation, or a more special, I don't say it's not relevant, but a more specific case where you look at a certain retrofit action that can then be repeated in other parts of the building. And that's where you find this connection in your material.
Yeah, I will argue like there are, as far as I've understand, like really only two main ways of savings. Like it is the insulation, and it is the source of the heating. And I think just that in the source of heating, you would probably see a lock-in effect, because it is hard to imagine that like you buy one type of heating, it should then throw out, and you buy another.
Yes. One last question from me. You didn't have the insulation thickness as part of your data, did you? Because that would make a difference.
No, yes, and no, a retrofit measure was only counted if it was above a certain thickness. So I think for the walls it was like 12 centimeters, and for the ceiling it was something else. For the windows it was a certain U value or 3-ply. But yes, it wasn't a transformation, no, a continuous scale.
Because then I would think the thicker the insulation, the less you would see of your effect then. Where I think 10 centimeter, 20 centimeter, that has become quite normal when you tear down a wall and you build it anew in a retrofit measure. And you would have to ask for more. And this asking for more then would qualify for you being particularly environmentally conscious. And there, I think you wouldn't do this, as you also write in the paper, you wouldn't do this when you first ask for 10 centimeters, then you tear it down and put 20 centimeters in. Yes.
But like, I think it is also like if you want to retrofit, you will find something to retrofit, and I think most households do not run out of places to insulate or improve on. But yeah, I don't think people retrofit the same parts of the house, but I don't have the data to back that up.
But overall, as I said, I think this is a really important important research. That sounds a little bit cheesy, but I hope I've argued for why this is important. The humble insulation, and I remember a report a couple of years ago where Westlandsforskning, where they had these scenarios where they tried to explain why per household energy consumption in Norway wasn't rising as much as one could think, based on the increase in population, and they found that this continuous refurbishment in Norway, that this played a role there. And I think this humble incremental kind of you do some renovating, which Norwegians really like, and then you put a new window in, or you put a new piece of insulation in. This is really important, even though it is so inconspicuous. And I think you're pointing us towards that, and that's very, very good. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to open for everyone.
Super, thanks a lot. Great discussion, and we already have comments in the chat, so you can continue doing that.